Hi BookTube, and welcome to this Sideline video. Yeah, see, I thought it was going to be a book review, and I thought it was going to be difficult to write, but it turns out it was almost too easy. The words just kept piling up, and so yes, you'll see that I've kind of structured it as if it were a book review, but I'm going to call it a sideline, and there's two reasons for that. One, I'm going to be sharing more personal reactions than I would normally allow myself. And secondly, I think I'm going to struggle to keep to my 20-minute time limit for book reviews. The book we'll look at today is Man-Made Woman by Ciara Cremin, published in 2017 by Pluto Press in London. I'll summarize this book. In July 2015, Colin Cremin, senior lecturer in sociology at the University of Auckland in New Zealand, crossed a line. From a young age, he'd always loved women's clothes and accessories. For many years, he secretly bought his own wardrobe and cosmetics and wore them in private, which made him feel guilty. Finally, he took a decision to stop keeping secrets. On the 27th of July, he left his home and arrived on campus dressed in a black skirt, blouse, pantyhose, and court shoes with full makeup and nail polish. And he conducted his lectures as usual, without making any reference to his new appearance. Cremin says, quote, "I didn't cross that threshold as a one-off performance, nor originally did I expect it would be a permanent change of clothes. I envisaged dressing as a woman occasionally, regularly at first, for people to get used to it, but a little less frequently after a while. I expected the novelty would wear off, but it hasn't." Having surprised himself as well as others, Cremin had a personal journey to take as he grappled with the implications of this change. A colleague recommended that he document his experiences and his thoughts, and this became Man-Made Woman. This is the section where I usually give a little author biography, sometimes an inadequate one. There are a lot of biographical details in this book, but what I think would be more helpful in this section is a discussion about identity and pronouns, because for Cremin, this has been a journey. He was born and identified at birth as a boy, and he grew up in a working-class home in London in the 1980s. He says he recognized an attraction to female clothing and beauty products as early as 4 years old. He continued to dress as a man, but he was influenced and encouraged by the music career and the very confident genderqueer presentation of Prince. I'm going to quote from page 14 of the book, where Cremin talks about his position concerning identity and pronouns at the time that Man-Made Woman was written. "Well, calling myself Ciara rather than Colin added no additional insight. It is consistent with the aesthetic, just as Colin was consistent with the aesthetic before. Whether Ciara or Colin, let's strike a bar through our names. Call me Ciara/Colin if you like. There's no word that doesn't at some level do linguistic violence to the individual. Language is slippery. L, G, B, T, Q, I, there are not enough letters in the alphabet. Rather than attempting the impossible in seeking words to overcome the contradiction of gendered language, I here embody the contradiction in self-descriptive phrases such as a man dressed in woman's clothing. And when people ask if I prefer to be called he or she, Colin or Ciara, I tell most of them to decide for themselves what it means to be a woman, and whether dressed as I do, the balance has shifted so that it is now appropriate to call me Ciara." Now, since that time, Cremin may have changed position on the subject, and in my description box, I've included a link to a 2021 interview on the magazine website Storio, where the interview text uses feminine pronouns throughout, and there are indications from Cremin's responses that she now fully identifies as a trans woman. That is the reason you're also now going to see a pronoun shift in the rest of the video. Let's talk about how the book is structured. Man-Made Woman is 211 pages long, of which 193 are the text. There are 6 essays, beginning with the shortest at 23 pages, and number 5, which is really the last full essay, is the longest at 56 pages. And this is followed by some notes and a bibliography and subject index. Now, the text is dense on the page, and the font, it can't be bigger than 10 point. There's also no additional spacing between paragraphs except where the author is reprinting an extended quote from one of her sources. What I have done is just make some short summaries to give you a rough idea what each essay is going to cover. So here's the titles up here. So essay 1, What's in a Dress? This is a background essay about Ciara, what led to her creation, and how being Ciara, becoming Ciara, was a release from the social demands of masculinity, and the cumulative effect was to change Ciara's perspectives on gender and sexuality, and that led, of course, to this book. Cremin also gives her own summaries of the remaining essays here and discusses her 2017 stance on her own identity and pronouns. 2 is On the Lavatory Question. Cremin calls public toilets a flashpoint of trans politics, and she does not debate whether there are or are not essential qualities to being a man or a woman. This essay is focusing more on the qualities that we assign to gender, which cannot be proven to be essential to it, but are used nevertheless to defend stances against accepting transgender identities. Essay 3, The Aesthetics of Cross-Dressing. This is a close examination of how clothing defines the power relationship between men and women. Cremin uses personal anecdotes to demonstrate how male and female cross-dressing is a challenge to power. And 4, Everyone's a Fetishist. Now, I found this chapter trickiest to understand. I would not say I have understood all of it, okay? But the one concept I did take away was profound enough to make the reading of the rest worthwhile, and I will talk more on that later. And then essay 5, How Popular Culture Made Me, in brackets, a Woman. Cremin here suggests that modern capitalism has found a way to absorb and make attractive commodities and media products that seem to champion diversity, but create the illusion that society's prejudices are changing, even when the popularity of far-right politics suggests otherwise. And essay 6, Full Exposure, is just a short summing up of everything that's been covered. Now, how did I get this book, and how much did it cost? I discovered this book at Blackwell's Books on Broad Street in Oxford. The University of Oxford has a very good department for continuing education. They offer short courses that might take a day or a weekend or sometimes just a few weeks, 3-4 weeks. The person who watches television signed up for a weekend workshop, and I think this was 2018. He was learning some new techniques for using his digital camera to photograph buildings. I tagged along for the ride, and obviously, if I have time to myself in a university town, I will beeline for the bookshops. Blackwell's Oxford I love because it's been trading since 1879, and it is the largest academic and specialist bookshop in the UK. It has a unique interior with some preserved old fittings like this lovely bookshelf that you can see here, and it feels Warren-like. I was burrowing around at the lowest level, and I found Cremin's book, as you might expect, in the gender studies section. I paid the full price of £16.99, that's $22.45 US. So why did I choose to read this book, and why have I chosen to expand my video camera or webcam viewer? Well, I don't normally get personal in book reviews. I prefer not to do so, but I couldn't think of another honest way to explain why I have an interest in this book. I've said before that I am a cis-hetero female, and yet there are many ways I don't fit the mold, so to speak. And maybe because I don't fit the mold, I also lack enthusiasm for a lot of the social expectations that are put upon women. I'm not sure, but I haven't heard any other cis-hetero women talk about this on camera. So I thought, well, maybe it's good if somebody does. Firstly, I don't have a female-shaped body. I have female reproductive organs, but I have an android pelvis. It's often called a male pelvis, which is strange because 32% of women are born with a pelvis that is actually wider at the top and then narrows down, rather than what we think of as typically female, which is narrow at the top and wider at the bottom. I have a flat chest, my shoulders are broader than my hips, and my waist does not taper in. The back of my head is flat. I don't really have earlobes. My calves and my ankles are very heavy. My feet are big and wide. And somewhere about my early 40s, I stopped trying to wear dresses and skirts because I felt I wasn't carrying them off. Sometimes I'd look at myself in a reflection and I think I look like a male cross-dresser. And I've been mistaken for a man on several occasions. Not so much now that I wear my hair out and longer. I have been challenged once when I entered a woman's washroom. I was attending a festival, and so I was wearing bell-bottom jeans and a t-shirt and a Tilly hat. I had no makeup or jewelry because we were camping in a small tent, and it was just too much faff to take along. And my hair was pulled up underneath the hat. Also, we talk about my general enthusiasm for doing female things. I have ups and downs. I do mostly like doing my hair and makeup, mostly. Not so much shopping for clothes, though. I sometimes wish I had a man's freedom to just get up and within 30 minutes I'm completely ready to go out the door. I would like that sometimes. And there are female things that I've never done. I've never done my nails or wanted to do them or even properly grown them. And I have absolutely zero attraction to handbags or pretty shoes. I don't like wearing perfume. The only jewelry I wear are earrings, and I was somewhat coerced into getting my ears pierced when I think back on it. And really, I just wear the same 2 or 3 pairs most of the time with everything. So I fit and I don't fit. I fit the female stereotype in that I like the arts more than the sciences. I like to cook, but then I don't fit because I've never wanted children, and I don't enjoy shopping as a recreational activity unless you're talking about book shopping. And the whole business of making a house look nice inside, it's just a burden that I carry very, very reluctantly. Now, going back to the times that I was misgendered, yes, they were unsettling. But the point I really want to make about that is that I am really lucky. As a woman, I can get away with this kind of non-conforming behavior, and the negative reactions are usually easy to dismiss, and they don't come that frequently. I've never had hate speech on my channel. I've never been threatened with violence. I've never been attacked. Now, trans women and men, on the other hand, have to tread very, very carefully because the reaction is different. I'm wearing men's clothing right now. This is a man's shirt, and I bet nobody has even batted an eye. Cremin's book is asking, why does it matter more when a man wears women's clothing? Like, what is it culturally that is driving? What is it psychologically that is driving that stronger reaction? And if Western society is pretty okay with me, because basically I cross-dress back and forth between men and women's clothing, depending on if I can get something that fits, and yet I can still claim to be cis hetero female. Also, why aren't men allowed more freedom to explore what is typically considered female presentation without having their maleness called into question? And those are the issues I was really interested in hearing Cremin explore. Cremin's book it's not just about cross-dressing, however. It's also a plea, I think, for a male-led men's liberation movement. And I think the most profound insight that I obtained, this is from that essay that I said I struggled to understand, it was the way Cremin turned upside down Freud's theory, and you'll know what it is without me having to use the words in case YouTube doesn't like the words being said. Freud believed that all women had an essential psychological lack, and that's because they envied men, but they could not be men without the necessary organs. Cremin disagrees, and he makes a claim that it is men who suffer the psychological lack, because men are never permitted to feel secure about being men just because they possess the necessary equipment. Cremin suggests that traditional masculine socialization is perpetually castrating men and demanding that they earn the right to be accepted as men by participating in a never-ending performance regimen. Women are also socialized to believe in this same performance regimen, and they demand it from the significant men in their lives. And this regimen is emotionally damaging. Cremin wishes that all men would just turn their back on it, and he believes cross-dressing is one way, one very powerful signal that a man has given up the whole game, and a very powerful statement that the game isn't real, that it doesn't matter. And Cremin thinks this is why male cross-dressing gets far more negative reaction from both men and women, because it threatens to expose the fact that all the efforts made by both men and women to support this regimen are a complete waste of energy. Is there anything readers should be prepared for if they are going to read this book? It's an academic work, yeah. It's written for an academic audience, and it assumes that whoever reads it is going to be comfortable with the esoteric vocabulary that comes with philosophy, psychology, and sociology at an undergraduate, maybe graduate level. This is seriously intimidating. And I've talked about this, haven't I? I've never been 100% convinced that this kind of vocabulary is anything but a kind of class division, a way of building a wall around perfectly understandable ideas, so that people who can't afford university fees will remain excluded and unable to benefit from the concepts. If you watch my material, you know this is one of the things that really gets under my skin. That being said, I think there may be good reasons why Ciara Cremin chose to write an academic work rather than a popular one in a different style. She has not stated these reasons herself, by the way. These are just my best guesses, but here we go. Reason one, the subject matter is, as you probably already concluded, very provocative. That is the reason Cremin wanted to write about it and examine what exactly causes all these strong feelings. If you write a book for the popular market about a very provocative subject, then Cremin would attract more attention to herself, and she'd need to handle that attention, good and bad. Cremin may have chosen to write an academic book, therefore, in order to keep the reading audience smaller and the amount of attention reduced. Reason two is similar. The subject matter demands that the reader give it careful consideration, right? And question their emotional reactions to the writing. An academic audience is better trained to do this, although they're not perfect. I mean, Cremin mentions the reactions that she got from some of her colleagues at the University of Auckland, and they were mixed. Okay, but mixed. And reason three, I think publishing an academic book is likely to focus attention more on the ideas which are being presented and less on Cremin as an individual. What I would add is that there is a generous amount of anecdotal material in the book about Ciara's childhood and growing up, and about the experiences that she's had since 2017. And these are written in a style that could appear in a popular book. Those sections were what helped me understand the points which were being made using specialist vocabulary. I imagine there is still a fair amount that I didn't get on my first reading, but I plan to keep this book and to reread it. Any ideas for related or follow-up reading? I did not count the number of times Cremin quoted certain authors. I just have an impression that I was seeing two names quite frequently, Jacques Lacan, the French psychoanalyst, and the philosopher Gilles Deleuze. Philosophy, it interests me, but whenever I try to read it or listen to a podcast, I get this feeling like my mind has walked into a fog. It's a fog mostly made of vocabulary, so my bugbear. And though I usually get close enough to some ideas to learn something, for the most part I feel lost. Now, that doesn't mean I wouldn't read Lacan or Deleuze, but it seems insincere to recommend a work of theirs when in truth I'm still a bit intimidated at the thought of tackling them myself. I thought what some viewers might be interested in is the Oxford University Department of Continuing Education, because there are a number of online courses, so anybody can attend them. They're in humanities subjects, literature, history, philosophy, art history, economics, psychology, etc., etc. I'll leave a link to that in my description box instead. And that is a sideline sort of non-fiction review sort of thing done. The non-fiction reading this month has been really demanding. So for September, I'm just going to give myself a little break and do something lighter. And to illustrate the review when I finish this much lovelier, fluffier book, I will need some photographs of domestic cats. And I just thought, wouldn't it be great if those were photographs of cats belonging to BookTube creators, and I could introduce the cats' names and the channels that own them. So if you would like to share a photograph of your cat, ones that you own now or ones you have owned, my email address is also going to appear in my description box. Look out in the next few days for a fiction review, or maybe Sideline, who knows, about William Faulkner's As I Lay Dying, which I just finished last night as part of the Faulkner in August read-along. So I'll see you then. Take care, BookTube. Bye-bye.